Welcome back to another episode of In Depth. My name is Luke Hardaker, and I'm a surf coach at Ombi. If you're new to Ombi, we take a look at surfing from the perspective of ocean, mind, body, and equipment. This week is really different. I've actually got an interview. So Stella is a physio. She's from the Ombi community. She wrote in a really amazing article and email to us talking about women in surfing and some of the issues that she wants to see and changed and things that we think can be done better. So a back and forth series of emails ended up her writing an article. And she's a very experienced physio. She's amazing. She's been doing work with Sydney FC, which is the football or soccer club. She works with their junior academy. She's previously done work with the Matildas, which is Australian Olympic team. And she is a surfer. She's going through a lot of similar things. So I sat down with her and just had a chance to walk through her experience, one, as a woman in surfing, her as a physio working with athletes, her and talking about how she can find things in the lineup as a surfer, but then also things that women face in surfing and the new generation of female surfers. But also I got into some topics about what to do for your daughter and how to motivate them, and also things about what to do leading into pregnancy or after. And that's something very close to a lot of my friends at the moment. I'm at that age where everyone seems to be having kids. So there's a whole host of really interesting topics that she starts giving really good advice on and coaching. So have a listen this week. And to give you an idea of this is the first of a community highlight. There's a lot of really good stories going on in the community, and I want to start highlighting them. So what we're going to do is, if you've got something really good, something really interesting, a unique perspective that other people can not feel alone, or that they can feel someone else gets them, or if you just have something that's benefit to the rest of the community, we want to hear about it. So without further ado, here's our first community highlight. Here's my interview with Stella Veith, physio in Wollongong, Australia. Hi Stella, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, good. Good to finally meet you.
Yeah.
How are you? Where are you, in Sydney, I assume?
Yeah, a little bit south in Wollongong.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
How's the sun?
It was all right actually today. Yeah, I got up twice. So.
Is it your typical summer northeast wind, kind of small surf?
The wind has been very annoying. Yeah, it's been very southerly actually, and we don't have many protected beaches from that.
Yeah.
So
I haven't actually been. I've been to Wollongong once, but I haven't surfed it. I was just briefly through there. But I've grown up on the other side of surfing, the other side of Sydney, kind of just north of Newcastle. But thank you very much for joining me. Thank you very much for taking your time out.
Thank you.
For those who are listening, who aren't aware, Stella sent in an amazing email about women in surfing, and we started talking, and I wanted to start picking apart some of the questions she was sending in. And there's a lot of things that, as a surf coach and having my partner surf, I'm quite frustrated with women in surfing. So I wanted to ask you a lot of questions about that. So in the show notes, there'll be the full write-up for what Stella's sent through. So there'll be a full article on that. And then I also want to ask you a couple other questions about what you've dived into. So I've done a little bit of research, so correct me if I'm wrong.
Awesome. Yep.
But you're a physio.
Yep.
You work with what I would, I guess, consider elite athletes. You work with Sydney FC in their junior academy. You also went to the Olympics and worked with the women's Australian rugby team.
No, I did not.
Okay.
I worked with I went with the Matildas, so the adult female national team, into like a pre-camp last year before the Olympics. So that was pretty exciting. And I work with the under 17s, so the junior Matildas.
Nice. Just quickly while we're on that, what was that experience like, I guess, from the perspective of women in sport?
Just generally working with national team, or?
Yeah.
It's like, I guess somewhere sort of culturally it is quite different working with men or with the boys at Sydney FC. it's quite similar, obviously, with women having the same goals and the same drive and things like that. But communication can be quite different, especially as a physio. I guess I'll get approached a lot more and a lot more direct with more direct questions, whereas with I feel like with men, it's often more like they you have to sort of go and ask, "Are you okay? Like, what's going on?"
Yeah.
Instead of being approached.
Do you think that's, I guess, from the social backgrounds of men not wanting to feel weak and seem like they need help?
Yeah, I think that's a big part. I think it's like it's often the approach of oh, a bit of pain is okay. I'm just going to play through that, and I think we find that similarly sort of in the girls if they're not used to actually having that support system around them, because they're not being so they don't have that same sort of I guess medical environment easily accessible for them. So then they often don't say anything because they don't know, okay, here's actually somebody that can help me.
Yeah, nice. So I want to, I guess, get you talking about what you've written about, which was
Yeah.
a really amazing insight into women's surfing. So this article, you go into a lot of the stuff, background, environmental issues that women may face that I guess the crux of it really what I took away is that there's misconceptions with women surfing,
Yeah.
and that there's a lot of really bad stereotypes that need to be changed, and that what we assume is a gender specific thing is more just a really bad way of explaining something that where a specific surfer is struggling
Yeah.
in their movement and their body, and that it doesn't really, if I think back to all the surf coaching I've done in my life, I've never really given different direction to anyone. It's the same whether they're male or female. And I think the only thing I've ever done different is the way I communicate to someone based on what will connect with them to make a change. And that's what I would like to teach people and what I'd like to promote. But I want to give this away to you. You go into detail about this concept of that female surfers move with their hips more. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, I think it's more something that we've sort of heard from more like the Ombi lives and things like that, where it can be a bit of a stereotype that this is what we're seeing. But I feel like it's yes, we might be seeing that, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that this is what it has to be like. It's more potentially like something that we were sort of trained to move like as when we were younger, and then we can't change those type of movement patterns to then work in the situation like that. It's pretty much our default to, for example, end up in that poo stance because this is how we're finding we're balanced and we can stay on the surfboard sort of thing, but we've actually never learned to be more front on and be like more front foot loaded or anything like that, which is then again more from what we've done as children or what sort of sporting background we have.
Yeah, because you went on to the environmental upbringing of girls and boys, where boys do tend to be more rough, and we'll find them in situations like boys from my own upbringing are more likely to go into skating and things that will potentially hurt them, where the girls that I grew up with weren't, and that also affects their ability and understanding of where they're at, and that then poses this difference. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that if let's say you have skated, even when you were younger, you have skated for like a year or something like that, then you've learned these like type of movement patterns already then to transfer over into surfing now if you're learning it. But it's very likely, like thinking back there when you were growing up, as a girl, you weren't necessarily put onto a skateboard. Like even now, I've started to skate, trying to improve my surfing, and people come and ask me why I have like open knees or something like that. And when I say, "Oh, I fell off my skateboard," they just go, "What are you doing?" Like you're almost a 30-year-old female. What are you doing on a skateboard? And I think these sort of perceptions have to sort of change, I guess, that it should go away from this is a boy's thing to do or anything like that, because once you're growing up learning certain things very early on, it makes it easier down the track to learn new sport.
Yeah. So one thing, I want to get onto this a little bit later, but say you have a daughter, what would be good advice? I don't want to push people into becoming a surfing superstar. I kind of disagree
Yeah.
with this whole like, I want to train my kid up to be this and kind of live through them. And I'm not trying to get at anyone if that's what you're doing. But if you have a daughter who is wanting to surf and skate, what advice would you give them just to go through and have fun and not worry about it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that if you are scared of something happening to your daughter, to then just go, would I be scared as well if that was my son, similar age or, similar physicality at this stage or something like that? Like, obviously, girls and boys go through different like stages in their maturation at different times. But I think the main thing is if there's an interest from the child, it shouldn't necessarily matter whether it's a girl or a boy. And then sort of adjusting the language to it, like instead of going, if you're noticing your daughter might be scared, then encouraging the daughter that, nothing can happen. Whereas
Yeah.
with boys, you often find that you have to hold them back because they like that risky behavior, sort of on average, obviously. But just trying to sort of adjust your language and not go, like, oh, you're a girl, you shouldn't be doing this or something like that.
Yeah. And just quickly, what also you said about surfing, I've found this very odd. There's an age thing around skating, and people, once you get over a certain age, the idea of skating, people are like, why are you doing that? It's so weird.
Yeah.
But I actually just got an email from Steve today who said he's 57 and is skating the bowl, getting up to the coping and wants to start grinding it. And I was just like, this is great. Can you please send me a video? Because
Yeah.
I get so kind of annoyed when people are like, I'm 40 something and I'm not going to learn to skate. And I'm like, why? Like, it's fun. Like, just put on protective gear and you're fine.
Yeah.
And then I want to keep going through this article. So I want to ask you a question with women and this idea of surfing more with their hips or being in Pooh Man stance and not having the environmental, I guess, risk factor and that constant ability of pushing the boundary that some boys grow up with. What are we actually observing then? So instead of the stereotype that we push on women, I know the answer to this, but I want you to give it to the listeners. I find women prefer to listen to a woman on some of these terms than a man.
Yeah. So I think that in general, it seems like, you're observing the poo stands, you're observing that they're not looking, for example, where the wave is breaking properly. You're seeing them looking down too much and nose diving or anything like that. And all these things are really just beginner surfing mistakes, So you then have the feeling that because you're seeing that so much in women, okay, this is typical for women. So this is the way they surf. But really, it's just they're not giving the opportunity to progress quicker, and they don't have the environment at the time potentially to progress quicker from that beginner surfer position, but also obviously would struggle more moving on from that because they haven't learned like similar movement patterns in the past, or it's so that everything is like more new, I guess, to the female compared to the male potentially.
And then we want to flip this on its head, which is you brought up a really great point, being that with the Groms, this whole narrative is changing around women. And I also want to ask you about, I wanted you to talk about that in terms of surfing, but I also am curious how that was with the junior Matildas. In that, from an outside perspective, I'm seeing a real generational movement and change in ability. And it's like night and day looking at what some of the young, maybe like 12, 13-year-old girls are doing compared to what some of the 25, 30-year-old girls are doing. And it's really exciting.
100%. Yeah. And I think that's because we're taking those stereotypes away a little bit, and we're giving the opportunities to younger girls to just do whatever they like. I feel like, like they're learning things earlier and therefore already progressing a lot quicker. And yeah, we can see that obviously in skating, like even, in the Olympics, the last Olympics, how young these girls were. But we can, it was actually very similar as well, looking at, for example, junior Matildas, like you have now already really young players pushing through to older age groups, which didn't necessarily happen before to the same extent, because they already have more technical ability. They're more physical, and that changes the game. So the speed that the women are showing now within football is just so much higher than what it was. And I guess one of the from my background as a physio as well, obviously, we're looking at injury risk a fair bit, and different movement patterns, how that sort of increases injury risk. And this is, for example, something where with the junior Matildas, we were really trying to focus on, like knee positioning so that they don't hurt their knee or anything like that. And you can see that if they're quite talented but haven't played football for a long time, it is a lot harder to teach them the right movement patterns and things like that.
So correct me if I'm wrong. This is a very ignorant question. I studied as an engineer, not a physio. I don't really. I've worked as a surf coach for quite a long time, but I kind of feel that with movement, there isn't too much difference between a man and a woman in terms of surfing. Is there much light to that? Is there any biomechanics that is significantly different for the average female surfer that they should be aware of? Because I kind of feel like, no, just do the same style of movement and it will work for you.
Yeah, I think that's this. I think the only thing that we might consider is maybe different weight distribution, so that like we might have more weight up top potentially, but and then obviously we can't create the same power necessarily through our legs or something like that. But it all comes down to technique. So if you're applying the right technique, then your surfing will be fine. You just have to get to that stage where you can get rid of your sort of bad habits and just relearn the good stuff, pretty much.
Yeah, I completely agree. Power is illusion. So I think what I always coach is moving more efficiently. It's not about jamming your back foot, this or that. If you move more efficiently and do the movements properly through the whole part of your body and not one thing, you'll get more out of your surfing than just that. So that leads me to the next question.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
I just wanted to say that probably for women, it can then be just really hard to know, though, what your body is actually doing. So unless you're seeing it on camera, for example, or you're practicing it in front of a mirror, then you might not actually know how much you're doing it wrong. And again, as any other beginner surfer, male or female, you're stuck in that, I don't actually know what I'm doing wrong until I see it. But I feel like it just needs even more that focus on land-based training for women that are sort of stuck in their surfing, to really retrain good movement patterns and get that constant sort of visual feedback of, no, this is how I meant to do it. So yes, you really, like, you can have the same technique as men. I agree, but the way to get there might be harder for a female if there's not much sort of background.
But then I completely agree with the previous statement that you said, that everything there is just the typical beginner. It's not unique to a woman. That, I've coached so many people, and not knowing how to move, just needing to film it, it's universal. So
exactly.
It's amazing. It's just like, you shouldn't feel bad wherever you are. It's not a you thing. It's not a your gender thing. It's just, you're not experienced. Go and film it. Go feel it out. Learn it.
Yeah, exactly.
So then that really well leads into the next question I have, which is one of the final parts of your article. And that's, what can the average surfer do with this information then? If you're a female and you feel that there's all the stereotypes and the environmental conditions that are there in the surf and what you've grown up for, how can they act or make changes to their surfing? What's the best advice that you can give to them?
I think it's sort of important to just be aware of that in the first place. Have a think about, okay, what did you do as a child? What did you do? What was your sporting background? And then sort of realize, okay, I haven't done anything similar, or I haven't done that much. So I can't be that good that quickly in surfing, because there are so many things going on. And then just picking it apart a little bit and seeing sort of where your weaknesses are. And then just really, as I said before, I guess, like, really focus on your land-based training, but then also like even if you know you're in that environment that's maybe not ideal for you, like let's say for example very like male based sort of out in the water, in the skate park, whatever, to just go, that's okay, like breaking those boundaries and just trying to focus on the fun aspect, and then just moving on from your own ability, going like, oh, this was positive, so I'm just going to take this away for myself.
That's really good, because that kind of answers my next question. I actually have a list of a couple of questions
Perfect,
that I wanted
yeah.
to follow up that are not directly linked to your article that you've written, which is amazing. These are very much stuff that I want to pick your brain on, which was managing expectations, social anxiety, and the lineup full of guys. But as you said, keeping it fun, accepting it, and moving on with it. I think that's probably the best way to look at it, unless you've got anything else you want to add.
Yeah, I noticed the other day myself, because I'm definitely not good. There was a big group of guys, and very often, like I paddle out and literally just scan the lineup and just see if there's any female surfer out there. And very often there's none, or maybe one. To then go, okay, am I sitting where I'm sitting to be comfortable with the wave, or to be away from all these male surfers? And then I'm like, if it's because everyone's male, then I'm like, no, that shouldn't be the case. So just go where you want to sit. But if I'm, for example, sitting away at a different like break or anything like that, because I know I'm going to catch waves here, or I'm more comfortable with this type of wave, then it's fine, So just having these little sort of, I guess, reality checks and being aware of that can help.
Do you that? To me, that sounds just like a pattern interrupter. Do you have something to create that conversation for yourself? Do you have something to trigger you to have those thoughts of, am I just staying clear of the group of guys, or am I sitting where I want to have? Do you have something that you use to trigger that?
I think I noticed that little bit of anxiety coming on as soon as I notice, like, I'm the only female out here. The waves are bigger than I thought, or like something like that. And then as soon as I get that anxiety, or like that sort of negative thought, I'm just trying to go, okay, let's spin this in a positive way. And then just focus on trying to be confident. And sometimes, to be honest, I sometimes pick guys out in the surf that aren't that good, where I would go, okay, I'm probably at the similar level. And then I'll try and sit close to them and just be a bit competitive with them, because I think maybe I can get waves over them or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's
to then go,
really
okay,
good.
this is giving me confidence.
Yeah, as a more, I guess I'm assuming I'm a bit more of an experienced surfer than you. I'm not saying that in a negative way at all. But in the lineup, that's essentially all I do, is I just look who's experienced, who's not, who looks out of place. I can pick out people who are nervous, and I can watch how someone paddles for a wave. And if I can see someone has no idea how to paddle for a wave, they kind of just paddle straight to the beach, I just go, that person's not competition. So I'm going to, like, if they're in my way or they're sitting where the wave wants to be, like, I don't have to worry about them. And I use that not in a mean way. I'm just like, I know that person's not going to give me competition. And if you're a beginner, that's such a good, I guess, explanation of how to apply that, is looking for someone who is similar to your level and just being like, I can compete with that person. And I don't have to compete with someone like me who's going to paddle all over the lineup to try and find a wave, because that's just frustrating as a beginner.
And I guess as well, then if you're at that stage where you do have to go sit somewhere else, because you're still working on your land-based stuff, and you just are there, then to just go, okay, that's fine. Like today, I'm just focusing on myself, and I think that just has to be that balance between, today I'm going to push myself because I feel like I can, and other days, you just accept that, okay, today I got to take a step back.
With your background as a physio, does that give you any good insights or help with developing your own surfing? So understanding the learning process, the movement, and everything else, does that give you, for lack of a better term, an unfair advantage against the average surfer?
I don't think so, because I still have a lot of bad habits myself. I think the only advantages it might give me is that I understand how much work you have to put in to improve. I get very obsessed, and I used to play football myself, and once I stopped playing football, I really got into surfing, and now I'm just competitive with myself, and just try and just be better every session than what I was before without getting
Do you
frustrated.
do you have those sessions where you're feeling like you're never surfing up to your potential?
Yeah, yeah,
What do
but
you what do you do with
yeah,
that?
as soon as that happens, I just go, doesn't matter, you're in the water, just have fun. And
Okay.
then I just try and like wipe out. Like it's
Yeah.
because I still get scared of that. And then I'm just really like picking one thing. Okay, what can I learn today? Um,
Great.
and just have it's I used to be very, very frustrated and coming out of the
Yeah.
surf and just being annoyed. And I think that training on land has changed a lot of that, because then you feel like you can practice it as much as you want. And that has been helping.
I think even with my experience, I really struggle with it because if I know I can surf so much better, I just tend to get frustrated, and I find it really difficult to pull myself out of that sometimes. Like I have to go and get a quick win sometimes, but I can end up coming back in. My partner will see me and she just be like, "How's the surf?" And I was like,
Have you found
Which,
strategies to get around that?
um, yeah, I tend to just try something.
Mhm.
Just whatever it is, just do something ridiculous. Try and feel something new. Try and do something that's fun, or just lower my expectations. So quite often, someone asked me the other day what was in my lineup. I have a 9.0 log, a foamy, which is like the most Frankenstein beat up repaired thing, and
Yep,
one shortboard, which is partly due to my condition of like moving countries, getting stuck in quarantine, not quarantine, but COVID, and then not
yep.
knowing when to fly home, which I've actually just booked my trip home.
Yes.
So I'm back in Australia in a couple week and a half.
No.
But yeah, I didn't buy boards because I was like, oh, I don't know what, like, am I staying here long term? But being on a log and being on a foamy, just expectations are gone, and
Yep.
it's only on my shortboard when I have some expectation of my ability. Whereas on a longboard, it's kind of just everything's cheating because I can get the wave from start all the way to the shoreline. The foamy doesn't really turn. So
Yeah.
any kind of movement on it is fun. It's like,
Yep.
oh, this board isn't really meant to turn. So if it turns, it's really good. It just feels
Yep.
fun because you don't expect anything. And
Yep.
that's pretty much my reality check every time, is just
Mm.
to not expect anything and go out and just have fun. I really struggle with the frustration of knowing when I should be surfing better than what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And Clay has a really good statement that I always need to work on, and I'll talk about it in the future because I need to grill myself on this because I was a bit of a shit back in the day. But he grilled me on surfing bad conditions. But he always says I'd rather surf bad conditions well than good conditions bad, because if you
Right.
can't surf good conditions well, you're never going to be able to surf anything well. So by being able to surf the bad conditions really well and
Yep.
surfing them all the time, you move into that. Whereas surfing good conditions bad, you end up just being frustrated. And you're
Yeah.
making
Yeah.
excuses saying that, like, if only the waves were perfect, then I'd be able to do this. And that's what I mean by, like, I need to go back to like me 10 years ago, because that was
Yep.
me being like, if the waves were perfect, Clay, I'd be able to do this. And he was like, you're only as good as you surf bad waves, Luke. And I was like, ah, crap.
I've also written some stuff onto my board so that when I get caught too much in my head, and the first word I wrote down is smile. So
Oh,
especially when I'm like paddling out and I'm seeing a lot of guys and like I'm getting the first wave onto my head, I'm just like, nah, just smile. And I think that just makes a bit of a difference too.
do you find that releases tension for you, that you just kind of let go of holding the shoulders or the body, the arms?
Yeah, exactly. And then I just try and just go, even if you're not catching a wave today, it's fine. You just sit out here.
Mm.
There's still something you can learn. Just watch somebody else, or watch how the wave's breaking, or just like
Yeah,
I'm
that's a
like if I struggle, just pick one thing you want to learn today, and then it's still a win.
if every student I had that attitude, I'd be very happy. As a surf coach, just, I've worked my time in surf schools, and you get a whole host of different people, and just having that
Yeah.
positive attitude is amazing. But I want to ask you a really specific question to a physio. A lot of my friends, I'm in my early 30s now.
Yep.
They're at that age of having children.
Yep.
And a couple of my friends that are local here have had a kid. A couple are now pregnant. And a lot of them all surf with me. And as they go through that process of having a child, I wanted to ask you as a physio, the prep that you may recommend someone to do before having a child, how they should surf leading into having a child, and after, because a lot of them, one of my friends was really amazing. She came back within like 6 weeks of having a
Wow.
child and was back in the surf. She
Yep.
lost her abs. Her abs were completely kaput, and she really struggled with popping up. She just didn't have the strength. And now she's at the next part of this. So it's kind of a couple parts. Is she's now got that real maternal fear. She's
Yep.
self-preservation now that she's got a child, whereas the father, nothing against him, doesn't particularly have that as much. It's not as strong or dominant. So I wanted to know, what was your opinion on a woman preparing while they're pregnant or just before, what they can do to help themselves, getting back into it, and how to manage that maternal fear?
Yeah, I guess the way you sort of come out of a pregnancy can be quite dependent on how you go into it. So if you were quite active beforehand, then that's good. But also if surfing is your main sport, and then you can't, obviously your belly gets too big, you can't necessarily surf for long anymore, and you lose that. To still find something to stay active, even if it's walking, some body weight exercises, like these sort of things are all fine to do. Obviously as long as you don't have any issues, or your doctors don't say anything different. But I think the main thing will be just gradually moving back into activity, and gradually moving back to surfing, so that you're very similar to, again, putting yourself back as a beginner, and maybe starting with just some bodyboarding or some body surfing first, getting used to the wave again, and then out of the water, just going back to your land-based training. And if that means, you're just going out initially, again, on a 9-foot foamy, to just get that feeling back of, and that technique back, then just trying to work through. And I guess just not being too hard on yourself as well. I don't have children, but I can imagine that must be very hard to, know that what if I get injured, and what if I can't pick up my child, I can't go home, anything like that. But surfing has just such power of making you happy, and being in the water, like that just makes such a big difference. So a good surf session, you're going home and being, a better person in some ways, because you're happy, and it's a bit of time to yourself. So I think just trying to find that balance as well between not pushing yourself too hard, but like bit by bit, just getting closer to what your fear is, and trying to like chip away on that pretty much. But some body weight strengthening, generally you can never go wrong with that.
Yeah. So would you advise maybe women, other than to give more specific exercises, Pilates and yoga Pilates tends to be quite good for this?
Yeah, Pilates is really good. The good thing with Pilates is that I'm a Pilates teacher as well, so that you're combining mobility with that strength component. So you always want to move quite consciously, and you're using your breathing a fair bit as well. And yoga, it really depends. Like sometimes yoga can't be that good if you're holding positions for too long, because you might be stretching too long. Like post pregnancy, your ligaments are still a little bit looser from the hormonal changes and things like that. So whatever makes you feel good, go with that pretty much. So if you don't like Pilates, don't like strengthening exercise, go walking. Like these sort of things, like do something to prepare to go back into the water. Start with some swimming and things like that.
Yeah. So you'd probably, I guess the age-old saying is just listen to your body.
Yeah, and if in doubt, really try and find somebody that can help you with it, like a physio or anything different, where you just have that trust to just go through like all these different things, and especially I guess a physio as well for like more women's health, that works on pelvic floor muscles and things like that. That's really important as well.
Yeah, and neither of us have kids, but I find it from an outside perspective quite, I guess, a sense of being powerless, that I have friends who have recently given birth and that they worry too much about their own headspace, being like, I used to be able to surf head high, now waist high, I'm fearful, I'm this and I'm that. And I don't tend to have the answers for them, because it's very exploratory, that you need to figure that out for yourself, that I can push people, but sometimes, and this is also very true with my partner, she's a beginner surfer.
Yep.
People want to be treated the way they want to be treated. They don't want to be spoken the way that you want to be treated, which is very true for everyone.
Yep.
I think that age-old saying, treat others how you want to be treated, is moot now. It shouldn't really exist.
Yeah.
But from working with athletes, working with the Olympic teams, have you experienced any amazing coaching techniques or methods that really connect with women and help them improve in whatever sport they're doing? So to give you an example, my partner, which one, partners don't want to listen to their other partner.
Yes.
They don't want to be told what to do. That's such a difficult dynamic. But then even some women that I've coached, I have to change the way that I talk to them to get them to do it. So to give you an example of my partner, I can't scream at her, say, go, 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 take the wave.
Yeah.
I have to change the way I communicate with her to challenge her. And I'm like, can you do it? I don't ask her, I give her an out and say, can you take it? And she'll look at me and she doesn't want to seem then that she's weak or that she can't do it.
Yep.
She then motivates herself to do it, which is, I guess, my example. But what can women do for themselves? And have you experienced anything that you think people should try?
Yeah. So that is a really good example. I think being able to have that decision over yourself is really important, but also being explained why is extremely important for women. So with guys, again, you can just go like, oh, I reckon you can't do that, and they just go and try, whatever happens, no consequences, sort of thing. And I think that with that wave selection, for example, would rather be like, oh, look at that wave, what do you reckon, is that standing up nicely, I think this is what's happening, try and do that. So there's more background behind it. So in, let's say, for example, somebody after childbirth, okay, at the moment I'm struggling because I have fear, because my body doesn't feel right, my body has changed, and generally my abs aren't there. What are the things that I can control? And then trying to work on these ones. So, for example, then getting stronger again. What are other things that you can do in the meantime, like, for example, learning to read conditions better or anything like that, or still learning a bit of technique that is different, mindfulness, like these sort of things as well, to add them in. But I think in general, with that communication part, just explaining things is very important. So when we go through, for example, injury risk reduction stuff with the footballers, it's often trying to explain why we're doing all of these things that is not playing football, like all these strengthening exercises, but all they want to do is go out and play football. But really just to explain, this is what can happen and this is what's going to help you so that it doesn't happen. And then just, whereas with guys, it's often just like the coach going, come on, do it. And then they just go and do it.
So I think there's a couple really good points I'm going to pick out from what you've just said. One being control. And in the ocean, you have no control over it. You need to just let things happen. And I'm not going to name and shame anyone, but there are people I know who, I wouldn't consider them control freaks, but they like to have control in the ocean. And when they do that, it negatively impacts their surfing. They tend to tense up. They don't surf to their ability because they're too worried about trying to control everything and manage it. The more you let go and go with things, but as you said, being educated and understanding where to place yourself, you can control that. But then being in the ocean, you have no control. So you just need to put yourself in a position to flow, which is a massive thing. The other one then is having that stuff written on your surfboard is amazing. I think I was trying to sit there as you were going through this. I was just like, well, how can having a surf coach, my partner's very privileged in having a surf coach with her every time she surfs.
For sure, yeah.
And how, I'm there always pulling her aside, being like, what did you just do? How did that feel? What did you move? Trying to get her to understand and think and pulling her aside. But a lot of people don't have that and they don't ask themselves questions and they don't think. So when they're trying to talk to themselves, it's very difficult. And I think I was going to ask you, how would you recommend that? But you've already said it, which is writing something on your board.
Yeah.
Which is,
and I think as well, just maybe you don't have a surf coach, but you surely have some friends that surf as well, or maybe even that don't surf. Maybe they can film you at least or something like that. And but even if like what I sometimes do with my friends is when we go skating to just really try and oh, how did that look? Like what am I doing wrong? Just to really openly ask for feedback. And then and I guess with females as well, sometimes it can just help to be a bit more sort of hands-on, to really go like, this is the movement, this is where your hands should be, like anything like that, to just so that they feel it, even if it's on land, to then go, oh yeah.
Yeah. And I guess there'll probably be a lot more women listening to this who probably haven't listened to some of the other Ombi stuff in the past. But it is very much filming it is the best way to do it. To give you an example, I've been trying to learn handstands for a while, and
Awesome.
it wasn't until I started filming myself that I'm getting close to 10 seconds, and I was like, I get tired, and I was trying to figure out why when I get tired it gets so, and it's my alignment. It's literally just I'm not well aligned when I get tired, and I'm trying to practice my handstands. That I had to film it, and I was just like, my hips are not above my shoulder. That's it.
Yep.
Like instant feedback.
Yep.
I just went to the wall. I just sat on the wall, did my handstand, and I was just like, just filmed myself on the wall as well. And I was like, cool, I'm not even aligned properly there. Like I just need to go focus that, and just having that experience straight away, I could implement the changes, which is, I guess, what we talk about with Ombi, is making those micro adjustments, filming yourself, doing it, land-based training.
Yeah.
But I want to move on to some more surfing stuff with you. And I want to talk about style, especially women's surfing. What do you enjoy the most in terms of watching surfing? What do you want to see? What do you think is the most stylish kind of surfing? Or what do you want to emulate in your own surfing is probably a good question.
I love Steph Gilmore surfing. I'm surely not the only one on this planet. But I'm the complete opposite. I'm short, tiny legs. So I relate very much to Joanne Defay. And I feel what I really like is that she looks super strong, but her technique is still super solid. And I really like how just calm she is, and especially on her backhand, and that bottom turn is just amazing.
I think Steph's my favorite, which I think some people might be shocked by this, considering the whole gender stereotypes. But if I was to emulate any surfer, it's actually Steph.
Awesome.
I think just I'm never going to be Mick Fanning. So I have no interest in being Mick Fanning. And I don't say this in a way that Steph's surfing is not as good as Mick's, but Steph's, I think if I was to try and personify it, it's a lot more achievable in that what Steph's surfing to me is graceful fun. Like that's the elements that people take away from it. It's not the critical, perfect, articulate Mick Fanning surfing that everything's on point. Steph's surfing is really amazing.
100%.
But if I want to emulate it, it's just have the fun, smile on every single wave, be graceful, move easy. It's not so much about the perfection.
Yeah. I feel like with her, she just always does exactly what the wave wants her to do. And that's just amazing.
So then the other thing is Pipeline. Do you follow the tour?
Yep, a little bit.
How do you feel about women in Pipeline? Full contest, no one-off heat, no, stupid kind of one-off thing that they've been doing for the last couple of years. How do you feel about that?
Good, awesome. I think that I've listened to a couple of podcasts, but also, for example, watched the Women Can't Surf, and it's more just like I think for women to go through like even QSs or even more local comps, anyone who wants to be like on that tour, to then go, this is my standard, this is where I have to be at. And one day I could surf this with only one other surfer, 2, 3 other surfers in the water. So then the preparation already changes, right? Like you don't have to go and practice on beach breaks all the time that are only 2 foot, because you have to surf that one day. So that again, talking about all that environment, it changes the environment that your training has to be in, that your competition will be in. So that is only going to push it. And it shouldn't matter whether they massively succeed or not in like the public's eye this year. Like it should just stay in there, so that then girls like Sierra Kerr, if they're ever on the tour in 10 years, or with her probably in 2 years, but if they surf it then in who knows how long, that they can actually then exceed everyone's expectations because they have trained for it.
I agree. I think it's really personally excited. I haven't been excited about the tour for a little while, and I think that's just the direction that the company itself has been going. Kind of the mass media approach rather than trying to just keep it indented in surfing. That's probably my problem with it. I just want it to be surfing and not tennis or something else. But I think from an outside perspective, exactly what you've said, there's been a lack of opportunity. And if you're an up-and-coming female surfer, the standard is surf beach breaks. So that's all you need to work on. And you only need to surf to what conditions you're judged in, with now adding pipe, and then hopefully in the next couple of years adding QS events, as you said, that are more challenging in bigger conditions, barreling conditions. It's going to motivate the younger girls that if you want to be at the top, you have to surf that. You have to be pushing yourself. And by giving them that opportunity, I think it's the massive change in that, 10, 15 years ago, the women weren't given much opportunity. They had to surf snapper, but they were given the crappy times when the surf was crap. So their opportunity is already limited. They have to take the sloppy surf after the men get the best conditions. And I think it's really exciting now, which then leads me to another question is, how do you feel about the next generation? How do you feel about the young girls popping up? Have you seen like Stab High with the Ladybirds? Have you, Sky Brown, who's massive over here in the UK? How do you feel about that? What do you think for the next 5-10 years?
I think it's pretty awesome. I think they're sort of, I guess, leading the field a little bit. And I think it's good that, that with social media and all that, like all over the world, you can now see that they're doing these sort of things. So it hopefully changes like the thinking of most people now as well. I guess it's a lot of pressure in some ways, but it seems like they're having fun like themselves a lot. Like if you see them doing airs in the wave pool and stuff like that, like it looks like they're enjoying it, and it looks like the gap is just sort of closing a little bit between the boys and the girls in surfing.
Yeah, I think in the next 10 years you're going to see this. It's not so much that like there was all these comments of, if Chris was in the men's tour, she could beat a couple people, but it was only select really good top of the the top 2 female surfers, whereas I think that field of top 17 surfers is going to become a lot tighter, a lot more competitive, and there's going to be not big, but there's going to be less difference between the men and the women's, that there will be, in 20, 30 years, a bit more consistency between the two, which would be amazing.
Yeah, and I think as well, if the whole field of female surfers gets better, because they're exposed to it earlier, then it's just going to, the ones that survive and end up, surfing on the world stage, they just have to be the best. So it'll be a big difference, I reckon.
Yeah, and I think it's been seen in the men's. The Australian team, not the team, but the Australian surfers have been left behind for the last couple of years, and the Brazilians have come through, and the more hungry competitors have come through, and it's shown. And I think that's going to be really exciting for the women, especially now that they have the digital Vans Triple Crown as well. So they're being forced to, not forced, but if they want to, they have to surf pipe, Haleiwa, and Sunset, which is, again, really exciting. Just put them in better conditions and watch it grow.
Exactly.
But it's been really great to have you. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know it's nighttime. Is there anything else you'd like to give to potentially another woman surfing? Any advice, anything you would like to add?
I think that just knowing that if you feel quite alone out there, you're definitely not alone. There's I think even talking to my other friends, we all feel the same at different points, learning to surf, and that experience just will help to grow your surfing in some ways. You just gotta tack it and keep having fun.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much.
And there you have it. That's our first community highlight, my interview with Stella Veith, physio, an amazing person, surfer. You can find her at Twitter at STELLIV07. if you'd like to stay in touch with her and find out more about what she's up to. She does a lot of work with the university in Wollongong doing studies. She also does Fig Tree Physio, where she works part-time. And she does the Sydney FC Junior Academy. So she's doing a lot of exciting things. And that interview was amazing. I really enjoyed a lot of it because it doesn't matter if you're male or female. It doesn't matter what you're doing. So much of what you're going through as a beginner or intermediate, it's just about what's familiar to you. It's common problems that people face. It's not gender specific. So if you're a female surfer, you're not alone. You're facing so many problems that are consistent with what men face as well. And these are things that we want to highlight. We want to make this community feel so much better, and we're going to start doing more and more of these community highlights. So if you've got a really interesting story that you'd like to share, something that you think other people need to know that they're not alone in what they are going through, I can think of a really good community highlight I want to share in the near future. There's a guy who I know of in the community called Pete, and he is 62 and learning to skate. There's a lot of people out there who think they're 40 odd and they can't skate, and it's amazing. I think that's such a good story. And then there's also, I got an email through, I'm hopefully going to be sharing some footage of someone skating in 57, going around the bowl quite quickly. So that's really exciting. So there'll be more of this. If you'd like to get in touch or be part of a community highlight, you can contact me at info@ombi.co, or you can head to the website ombi.co, navigate to the In-Depth Surfing Podcast page, and fill out the contact form there. So as I said last week, I was going to do a podcast on the upper and the lower body. And this episode I've just slipped in between. So next week, I'm just going to get back to that disconnect between upper and lower body, trying to not have flailing arms. So until then, I'll see you next time.